Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. The first story today features a newly hired tech worker sent on short notice to assist a high-profile PR executive during a client emergency in Los Angeles. When he arrives at the Beverly Wilshire dressed for a cramped coach flight rather than a luxury hotel, the concierge instantly dismisses him as service staff, but the moment he invokes the name of the powerful chairwoman he represents, the situation flips. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The concierge who insulted the wrong delivery boy. Years ago, like 17, I worked for a major but very low-profile crisis PR firm. I didn't do any of that, I just worked IT, but it was a fascinating job to just see, even if it was filled with awful and petty people helping often even more awful and petty people or companies. I had the job, along with day-to-day support, to provide on-site support to our chairwoman whenever she traveled, as she was notoriously technophobic, hated everything to do with it, and only hated it more when it went wrong. I was told this could happen. Little did I know that I would end up being the only one who would end up doing it. There were more reasons, but I was just very good under pressure with her and quickly became more so. So just 1 month into my job there, having barely had the lay of the land, I was told last possible minute that a client crisis was blowing up and I needed to go downstairs where a car was waiting for me, run home, and get a bag packed and be off to LA where she was headed for the weekend. My team packed up her gear and overnighted it to LA while I was running for the door. I had just enough time to ask my boss, it's a 6-hour flight crammed in the smallest seats in coach, and I'm a giant, can I be comfortable for this trip or do I need business clothes? He said no, and I said for clarity, I do mean jean shorts and tees. He said that was fine, so okay, off I went. Getting off the plane in LA for the first time in my life, there's a man with a sign with my name on it. I identify myself and he looks me up and down and goes, "They may not let you in dressed like that." I laughed, sure he was kidding. He said, "I'm serious." "Where are we going?" I asked innocently. "The Beverly Wilshire," he replied. Seeing a blank look on my face, he sighs, rolls his eyes and goes, "The hotel from Pretty Woman?" My eyes popping a little let him know he'd made his point. If Rodeo Drive was open right now, I'd take you and make you buy something. Well, this didn't get to happen, despite my boss reassuring me that I did have the company credit card and I didn't have to justify my expenses too hard here. I asked if that meant I could go tomorrow and get something, and he said it'd be too late by then. Alas, no Versace for me. I was dropped off in the back and entered through their driveway. Normal spot for one of their drivers, but still, walking up to the concierge desk, the woman behind the desk, which was raised, literally looks down her nose at me and with her snootiest tone and look of annoyance goes, "Are you here for a delivery?" Dearest chat, I was not here for a delivery. I, having recently seen Devil Wears Prada and recognizing how this game is played, pull up my haughtiest voice and coolly respond, "No, I'm here on behalf of Mrs. Blankety Blank 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 as her representative this weekend." I crap thee not. The color left her face. My boss had 2 suites, plus my own room, and a room for her nannies. Waiting for her to faint and lacking the satisfaction, I continue, "Have her things arrived yet? Are her rooms ready for me to set up?" She stammered and clearly searched her broken mind for that information. "Well," I said with that same look of annoyance, "I'm so sorry, we had another guest stay an extra night. We won't be able to get you in until tomorrow. This would ordinarily be fine. She's the help. I'm the help. Neither of us are special or irreplaceable. If she just treated me with a bit of dignity, I'd be so patient and kind. But now I had to both fix this in case she arrived early, a common occurrence, and I had to teach her not to judge based on appearance, and maybe have a little more respect for others. That simply won't do," I snap. I almost laughed at the absurdity of how I sounded, but she didn't pick up on that. "What will you be doing to make this right?" She, still rattled but recovering, meekly offered a few options. I told her what needed to happen, having genuinely no idea if my fixes were right for my boss, but it was far too late to call the office to find out if her assistants could provide me cues. I only knew the few things I'd been told. We ended up getting things sorted out so I could go straight to work in the morning the moment the other guests walked out, who fortunately left early while my boss arrived late. With the most dismissiveness I could muster, I pulled out $20 of petty cash and tossed it across the desk, then slid one of their notepads and pens, tapping it authoritatively and saying, "Your name and cell phone? I need to be certain I can reach someone at any time, day or night, to get her whatever she requires." She obliged. Sadly, I didn't get the opportunity to ruin her weekend since I think she was off, though I did call her once to get some information about a previous day's newspaper and where I could get a copy. She was much more polite and helpful this time around. The staff was much nicer to me after this too. They didn't attempt to enforce the dress code on me at the hotel restaurant. Oh, and for the record, the Beverly Wilshire sucks. The rooms are dated and small. Even the suite was wholly unimpressive. Their toiletries and sundries are the most run-of-the-mill hotel brands. Nothing about it beyond the lobby was anything to suggest this place was special in any way. I had a vastly better experience at the Four Seasons in Grand Cayman Island. But that's a story for another time. In many high-stakes social environments, confidence and affiliation are more powerful than a dress code. You taught that concierge a valuable professional lesson. You can't assess a person's importance by their outfit, especially when they're the one holding the keys to the client paying for 2 suites. And our second story. My friend learned the hard way not to treat someone's trauma as a party game. His guests learned more than they wanted to know. One day I was invited to my best friend's birthday party. The party was quite nice, but very boring. The people there didn't really seem to have brought the energy for a celebration, so he decided to pimp it up a bit. He hoped that the party guests would wake up with a dramatic story. He gathered everyone in the living room and explained that he wanted to do a little storytelling session. He talked to me and asked to tell stories about my childhood, which he knows was a pretty crappy one, and I told him that I was not comfortable talking about my childhood, but he insisted. Several times he ignored my no, and when a few party guests also came along and said I didn't have to be shy, I decided to tell them, and not to leave anything out. Even the deepest and most disturbing moments of my childhood and everything bad I had to experience, down to the smallest detail, everything. I could see the corners of their mouths contorting from a tired smile to absolute horror. My best friend included, because what he didn't know was that I hadn't told him everything. To enhance the shock effect, I tried to tell the story as casually as possible. After my third story, they already had enough, and my friend asked me to leave, and he will call me later. He can't blame me for ruining his guests' moods. I only did what he wanted. Oh, and he didn't call me. Actually, he isn't responding to anything right now. And our next story. A family tried to cheat their way to a front row parade view. The crowd's unified refusal to move was the best show before the show. So what happened was that I was at Disneyland one day, and I happened to be there right as one of their parades was about to start. Pure luck, or maybe a tiny miracle, because anyone who's ever tried to get a good parade spot at Disney knows that it's usually a battle. I was riding one of the park's motorized scooters, and by some stroke of perfect timing, I managed to snag a spot right up against the barrier line. You know, the rope and stanchions they set up so people don't wander into the parade route and get flattened by a float shaped like a cartoon mouse? LOL. They just made the announcement over the speakers that the parade would be starting soon, and because I was already nearby, I ended up being one of the first guests to line up at the barrier. It was the exact definition of front row seats, especially since, unlike everyone else, my scooter was my seat. No jockeying for space, no elbows, no weaving through crowds. I was set. As the minutes passed, the crowd began to swell behind me. People filled in the space layer by layer until the walkway was packed tight. It was that classic Disney crowd, excited kids, tired parents pretending to still be excited, grandparents holding bubble wands they never intended to buy, the whole spectrum. And that's when they arrived. This rude family, and honestly, I'm giving them a generous title calling them just rude, came walking up on the wrong side of the barrier. The parade route side. The side absolutely nobody is allowed to stand on. They marched right up as if they owned the place and planted themselves directly in front of me. Like I could have reached out and tapped them on the shoulder. That's how close they were. And because they were standing on the actual parade path, they blocked my view, the view of everyone behind me, and basically inserted themselves into a situation that clearly wasn't meant for them. It wasn't subtle. They knew exactly what they were doing. Thankfully, Disney staff has eyes everywhere. A cast member spotted them immediately, probably before I even processed my own annoyance, and walked over to tell them they needed to move behind the barrier with everyone else. Because shockingly, being in the middle of a parade route's not allowed. The family grumbled, rolled their eyes, muttered something under their breath, but they did go around to the correct side. But then, because apparently their entitlement levels were off the charts, they tried to demand that we all move back. All of us, the people who'd been standing there long before they even showed up. Me on my scooter, the families behind me, the little kids perched on their parents' shoulders, everyone. They insisted that since their view was now blocked, we should move backward to make room for them at the front. Yes, they wanted the front row spots that they tried to cheat their way into, and they wanted us to fix the consequences of their own behavior. And absolutely no one budged. People around me shut that down instantly. A chorus of, "No, you can go to the back. We were here first," and "That's not how this works," rose up from behind me like a wave. Even the cast member who'd moved them originally repeated that they needed to stand wherever there was available space, meaning the back of the crowd, not shove their way into the front. The family tried arguing, tried guilt-tripping, tried pointing at their kids like they were some kind of golden ticket to entitlement, but it didn't work. Not a single person moved an inch to make space for them. They eventually gave up and slunk off toward the back, still muttering about how unfair it all was. And when the parade finally started, all of us at the front enjoyed our unobstructed view in peace. Exactly the way it should be when you show up early, follow the rules, and don't act like the main character of Disneyland. No screaming match was needed. No manager had to be called. The family's tactic, using their kids as emotional leverage, failed because the social consensus was stronger. They were outvoted by the unspoken agreement of dozens of people. And our last story. The seller left my new farm a hazardous junkyard and lied on the disclosure. They ended up paying over $10,000 for their deceit. When I bought my hobby farm, I thought I was buying a dream. New acreage, room for my horses, a place to finally settle. In the contract, signed back in October, I made one request that mattered more than anything. All large farm equipment in the horse fields had to be removed before possession. The fields were supposed to be clear and safe by March. But when we arrived on move-in day, my dream snapped like a rotten fence board. Every piece of old machinery was still rusting exactly where it had always been. Piles of garbage and broken junk littered the property like someone hosted a personal landfill behind my barn. And inside the house, the grate covering one of the floor openings was missing. Outright taken. And a second massive hole appeared the moment we moved the couch that had been hiding it during every walkthrough. 2 huge holes in the floor, a field full of hazards, a property that looked nothing like what I had agreed to buy. Worst of all, the farm equipment can't be removed until June when the fields dry out. Until then, I can't risk my 2 young horses anywhere near that field. One wrong step around rusted metal and I'd be paying for emergency vet bills. So I've had to keep boarding them off-site, draining my budget every month, exactly what I was trying to avoid by buying a farm in the first place. My lawyer's been negotiating with the seller, or more accurately, wrestling with them. The seller keeps pretending there's nothing wrong, acting like this mess wasn't entirely their responsibility. The negotiations dragged on so long that my lawyer finally sent me a bill for $900 just to continue dealing with them. A bill I simply do not have right now. We closed with a $3,000 holdback, but that doesn't come close to covering the reality. Junk removal, custom floor grates, boarding costs, legal fees, and the quote, to remove all the abandoned machinery. Altogether, it's pushing $10,000. Money I shouldn't even have to spend because I explicitly contracted for the property to be delivered clean and safe. I have proof of everything, photos from the walkthrough showing the couch hiding the second hole, screenshots of the listing materials, pictures of the grate that vanished, invoices for boarding, junk removal, equipment removal, every scrap of evidence you would ever need. But none of that makes it easier standing in my gutted living room staring at a floor you could fall straight through while my half-usable farm sits waiting for summer. My first-time homebuyer excitement is officially turned into a nightmare I can't wake up from. Negotiations kept dragging, the seller kept stonewalling, and the bills kept stacking higher than the old machinery rusting in my fields. That's when everything changed. After weeks of my lawyer politely trying to reason with them, the seller finally overplayed their hand. They refused to release a single dollar of the escrow holdback, not for the junk, not for the holes, not for the equipment, not for anything. Their arrogance finally triggered a formal review by the title company. And that review unearthed something the seller clearly hoped would stay buried. They had knowingly concealed structural defects and failed to disclose hazardous conditions, all while providing falsified move-out documents claiming the property was cleared. That discovery flipped the entire power dynamic overnight. Suddenly, the seller wasn't negotiating, they were defending themselves. The title company froze their funds, my lawyer drafted a demand letter backed by the disclosure violations, and within 48 hours, the seller was forced into a corner so tight they couldn't wiggle out of it. They didn't just lose the $3,000 holdback, they had to pay the full cost of junk removal, equipment removal, custom floor repairs, my horse's boarding fees, and my legal costs. In the end, they paid more than the $10,000 I expected because disclosure violations come with penalties that pile up fast when your lies get caught on paper. My fields will finally be safe by summer and my floors will be repaired. My first-time home buying experience may have started as a nightmare, but it ended exactly the way it should, with the person who created the problem footing the bill. The $3,000 holdback's typical for minor issues, a dripping faucet or broken appliance. It's not designed for major breaches like hazardous fields and hidden floor holes. The seller likely thought that amount was the ceiling of their liability. They were very wrong. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.